We'll get some more phone calls coming up. We make way for Maurice Jones-Drew, NFL Network analyst and the color analyst for the Rams radio, former NFL running back. Great to talk to you again, Mojo. Let me start with Derrick Henry with the Ravens. How do you think they're going to use him with Lamar Jackson?
Well, I think, if you go back and look at the AFC Championship game, they really didn't force the running game. I thought if they would have forced the running game, they would have beat the Kansas City Chiefs, and a lot of that was because they were on their fourth and fifth running back, right? Gus Edwards was there, who they had been utilizing, but Dalvin Cook came in. Like they weren't the guys that they started the season with. So I think when you get Derrick Henry there, he becomes now a vital piece of this puzzle where you knock on wood, he'll be healthy. You can run him. He only gets better as you run him. The more you run him, and it just creates that what Baltimore wants to be, that physical running game that they want to have going downhill. So I think it works out. Then you also can imagine this, a zone read situation where either you're going to have to tackle Derrick Henry or you're going to have to tackle Lamar Jackson in space, which I know is going to have defensive coordinators up all night.
Explain to me how a running back gets better the more carries.
Well, I think it's part of how you train. For me personally, when I was playing, I remember my first couple of years I was a backup, so I would come in and have to get going. But as you start to understand the defense, how they're trying to play you start to see where the defenders fit. You start to wear down the defense by breaking a couple of tackles here and there. Your offensive line, we call them repeat runs, where you're running the same plays over and over again, so you kind of can get your footing with your offensive line. And then that's how holes are created. If you ever watch games, and for all our listeners, the teams that run the football in the first quarter all the way through the game, in the fourth quarter you'll start to see teams break off bigger runs because they're wearing down the defense. And that's kind of what Baltimore did this past year, is they just started to wear down the defense. Kansas City did it as well down the stretch. The Niners do it all the time, and Detroit did it. You wear down the defense, and then in the fourth quarter, guys are tired. It's hard to get off blocks when you're exhausted. It's hard to tackle guys when you're exhausted. And for Derrick Henry at 6'3", 250 pounds, can you imagine trying to tackle that guy 20 to 25 times a game? It's going to be tough to deal with. And so,
how will the Eagles use Saquon Barkley?
Well, I think they're going to use him the same way they used DeAndre Swift. I just think that he's a tier better than DeAndre Swift. He's more explosive. I think he's better out of the backfield than Swift is. And Swift was a big upgrade from Miles Sanders last year. We saw him rush for over 1,000 yards and had some big games. I think if you bring Saquon in there, that just adds another element to explosiveness to this offense. And Daniel Jeremiah said something that actually resonated with me. We were always talking about the devaluation of the running back position, but as Christian McCaffrey has taken the Niners to levels and places they haven't been, you're starting to see more teams go out and try to find those guys to be their own Christian McCaffrey. I think that's what the Eagles have done with Saquon Barkley. They've seen how good the Niners have become with their running game and their play-action game, and they expect to do the same thing with Saquon.
He's Maurice Jones-Drew, NFL Network analyst, former NFL running back. We were talking yesterday about the qualifications to be a Hall of Fame running back now. Like, what is the measuring stick of, okay, that guy's a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, it's funny. I really don't know, and I think everyone's situation is different. I'm a big component of big fan of Fred Taylor and what he was able to do when we were in Jacksonville. I thought it was if you either rush for 10,000 yards or you get 2K rushing in a year, MVPs. Those are big things. But I also want the people that are voting to look at what teams are going against. When we were in Jacksonville, Dan, we used to run against 8- and 9-man boxes, right? Like I haven't seen a player yet run against a 9-man box in the NFL. And so there's a lot of these guys that are going, which is awesome. Credit for them. Like, they've had good years. But down in Jacksonville, we used to run against, they used to pull fans out of the stands and put them in the box to, stop our running game. And we were still
that's not true. Maurice, that is not true.
It is true.
No.
It is true. I'm telling you. I promise you, one time the Tennessee Titans must have tried a guy out on Tuesday, and they must have had, 17 guys in the box. And Fred found a way to get, but I just think at the end of the day, we look at the stats, and stats, they're factual, but they don't tell the whole story. If you really sit up and you watch the tape and you watch kind of, I'll give an example for Marshall Faulk. Big fan of his. When you watch their tape, they had such a dominant passing game that Marshall Faulk didn't really run against 7- and 8-man boxes. He ran against 6- and 5-man boxes because teams are afraid of their passing game.
Mm-hmm.
In Jacksonville, granted, we had a decent passing game, but people knew us to be a run-heavy team, a run-first team. So they would load the box, and Fred still was able to get 10,000 yards. So I think sometimes as writers and the people that are voting, you need to go back and watch the tape and look at the difference in different the way teams played Jacksonville compared to the way teams played other teams like the Colts or whoever else it might have been, and then you'll realize that Fred should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. So to me, I know there's some guys coming up. I know there's some receivers coming up that I'm really good friends with that haven't gotten in, which is crazy to me. But I think when you look at the running back position, stats only tell part of the story. They don't tell the whole story. And I think that's a big ordeal that we're having right now, and the guys getting into the Hall of Fame.
Give me the team going in the wrong direction. The worst team going in the wrong direction.
The wrong direction?
Yeah.
Let's see. Who's overpaid a quarterback? I guess you could say the Giants.
Okay.
The Giants kind of they're in a situation right now where, yes, you're building up your defense. That's awesome. But the only reason your offense was rolling was because of Saquon. You paid a quarterback a bunch of money. At the time, I think he was like 15-20% of your cap, and he hasn't panned out. And so to me, with teams that are paying quarterbacks all this money, that quarterback better be able to make plays, right? Because the more I allocate to my cap to him, right, the percentages to my cap, the less I can build a team around him. And so if I can't build a team around a guy that needs it, but I'm paying him $40 million a year, that's going to hurt my team. I think the Vikings in a situation are as well. They kind of hedged their bets with Kirk Cousins, and now you're stuck with Sam Darnold. I don't know how good Sam Darnold will be because he hasn't played in a while, but the last time he played, he liked to throw the ball to the other team. So I think that's going to be another issue as well that you have to deal with. Teams that are handicapped right now because of their quarterback situation.
Speaking of which, the Cowboys spending money with Dak. They're going to have to spend money on Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb. Who's going to be their running back?
I don't know. I'm sure they're going to go find one in the draft. There's a couple guys in the draft I think you can get in the third round. It just depends on what kind of guy they're looking for, though. Are you looking for an Ezekiel Elliott type of player that could be your first and second down back with the ability to do some third down stuff? Are you looking for a third down guy like Tony Pollard like you had last year? There's a couple guys in the draft, but I think they're going to have to hit the draft because they're still over the cap from my understanding. They haven't re-signed Dak yet. They haven't gotten CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons done. They got a lot of work to do. And, again, I know free agency, the Jags used to live in free agency. That never really panned out, which I think is a smart thing for the Cowboys. But they have a lot of holes to fill. If you can't run the ball or stop the run come January, you're going to have those early exits like they've done the last couple of years. So you have to hope that they're trying to figure out a way to fix that interior offensive line, to fix that interior defensive line, and get them a strong running game to help Dak Prescott and this offense out.
Who had a better week at the quarterbacking position, the Falcons or the Steelers?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say I would go with the Falcons. I think Pittsburgh is going to have to draft another receiver, and so to me that's going to be a big deal, like to get another receiver, obviously, to help out because you just lost Deontay Johnson, who was a really good player. But in Atlanta, literally all they needed to do was pick up a quarterback and just drop him in this system. You picked a quarterback that's been in this system before, that was in the system last year with all those weapons, adding Darnell Mooney, with Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. That to me sounds like an offense that I want a piece of in fantasy. So I think they hit it out of the park with that one. Then let me talk a little bit about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm very interested to see how Russell Wilson is going to work in this situation where it's going to be a run-first offense, very similar to what he was in Seattle, yes. But what receiver do you go and get to help be that deep threat down the field, or a guy that can kind of replace what Deontay Johnson did? And I know there's some really good receivers in this draft, but you're going to have to go get those guys early. So did Pittsburgh tell us that they're going to go receiver early in this draft, maybe in the first round, or what they're looking to get But I think they put themselves in position to go and contend for an AFC North title with that Russell Wilson signing, because he's a much better player than what they had on the roster last year.
Good to talk to you, Mojo. We appreciate your time as always.
Oh, no problem. Always good to talk to you, man.
That's Maurice Jones-Drew, NFL Network analyst and former NFL running back.